Thank you, Mr. Igor, for your insightful presentation. We now continue with our next session. We are pleased to welcome Dr. Shankar, the founder and CEO of Eartheye Space Singapore, with a presentation titled Construction Monitoring and Digital Twins. Dr. Shankar, please take the floor.
Assalamu alaikum. I'm back. For those of you who didn't see me last afternoon, Your Excellency included, thank you for coming back. I might have made an impact for you to being told to come back this morning. You said, what happened? Thank you, everyone. Those of you remember me from just before lunch, I'm always put in this position just before tea break. And I wasn't even meant to be here doing this presentation. I was happily only doing yesterday's presentation. But I heard somebody bailed out. So then the organizers were looking for alternate presenters, and here I am, the sucker in front of you to present on a topic I'm not an expert, but I'm going to talk to you about how constructions can be monitored effectively from space. So yesterday, if you remember, how many of you remember who I am? The Uber guy, right? The Uber for satellites. So today I'm going to talk about how the situational awareness in construction works with digital twin, again from space. I know nothing about what happens terrestrially. Okay, so anyway, jokes aside. So yesterday we talked about situational awareness being multisensory. We said situational awareness is not a single source problem, it is a multi-source problem. We looked into the challenges of being focused on single source, such as optical data. When it's cloudy, you know what happens. All you get is pretty picture of clouds. So nothing below the clouds are visible in terms of any situational awareness, whether it's national security, whether it is agriculture, deforestation, disasters, or constructions monitoring. So we talked about the OODA loop yesterday, right? So we talked about why it's important to have situational awareness that goes through the classically understood OODA loop, but more importantly, driven by data and information velocity. How do you achieve that data and information velocity if you are only stuck with one source of data from space, i.e. generally most people tend to rely on one constellation. Whether it is sovereign, whether it's commercial, it tends to be very limited. We talked about yesterday how that might be just relying on a taxi company or a couple of companies, depending on where you are, or public transport before the ages of Uber and Careem. So that is what we saw yesterday about what is multi-sensor. This is for His Excellency's benefit. I'm recapping for also those who missed, like I found some people on my own table who missed my presentation yesterday. So very quickly. So what does a multi-sensor situational awareness look like? When you bring hundreds and hundreds of satellites across different sensor modalities on one platform with one workflow, just like you call an Uber, or better still, order Uber Eats. Multiple cuisines from multiple restaurants ordered in a single workflow. This is how you order a task and order different sensor data. Now, why you might ask, like we said, situational awareness is not only when the sun shines. Situational awareness is 24/4. Situational awareness is beyond what you can see with naked eyes. So there are lots and lots of different sensors that is going to unlock what's happening on the ground when you bring them together. LiDAR from space is coming later this year. I think most of you are familiar with LiDAR airborne drones, but LiDAR from space with 10-centimeter vertical accuracy from 500 kilometers. How good is that? Later this year, LiDAR would be there, and so is 3D. So gone are the days you need to collect in stereo and tri-stereo, which is an example I'm going to be showing. But we can also collect in 3D natively in space. So that is also a new capability coming later this year. In addition to 15-centimeter optical, which is already available today. I'm going to show you some of those, how it's used, particularly in drone-denied environments, when drones, which you are used to collecting in 2 to 3 centimeters, is no longer possible. So we talked about how we need to bring them together, i.e. the Uber Eats. We talked about the numbers, so I won't belabor the point. How you bring them together in a single platform, either for a person to task or an event to orchestrate that. We talked about the concept of tip and cue, where you get 2 sensors to work together. As a situation is unfolding, there's a subsidence in your construction site. But you're not there to see it at 2 in the morning, you're sleeping. How does the sensors work together to capture that situational awareness? So that is the single workflow, the world's first single workflow multi-sensor situational awareness platform we talked about, bringing 500+ satellites and extracting information on the fly. So we looked at various informations that we extract. We talked about the concept of to see to know. To see, it's not enough. You need to know. And to know, it is even harder. So the idea is faster decisions are not necessarily the smartest decisions. So we talked about how do we continuously have that capability delivering that OODA loop, so that even in construction, you need to, it's not a snapshot. It's not you take a point in time. It is a continuous process, right from the point of site survey to constructing to maintenance and operations. So, to the main topic, why monitor construction? Obviously, critical infrastructure needs to be monitored, and not all critical infrastructure can be monitored with drones and aerial. And some of these are very large, and they could be also far-flung. And obviously, another issue with monitoring construction is scope creep. How many projects get done in time and on budget? Environmental damage, right? So constructions do cause environmental damage despite the certifications and the regulation and the compliance requirements. Cost blowout, as we mentioned, opportunity cost of not having the critical infrastructure on time. Progressive payments, if you are making payments based progressively on the construction progression, that gets impacted, and therefore you need to monitor construction. And more importantly, I would argue, coming from a country like Singapore, health and safety, very, very important. How do you monitor health and safety? How do you monitor for hazardous materials? How do you monitor for equipments left on site? From space. I'll show you in a minute, in 15 centimeter, and also in hyperspectral data. And reputational damage. That is another huge issue. Construction companies have gone under because of the reputational damage. So these are some of the challenges in large scale. I am not talking about monitoring a single building. While, as I will argue, that is also important because you can pick up millimeter level subsidence, deformation, with technology called interferometry SAR or INSAR from space. But I'm also talking about very large constructions. We're talking about cities, like Nusantara in Indonesia, for example. How do you monitor these very large cities as they are being, or NEOM? I heard from somebody yesterday that stalled, I'm not sure. But how do you monitor these very large projects, especially if they are drone and aerial denied environments? Size, as I mentioned, reach, may not be able to get people and line of sight drone surveys, aerial, expensive. Personal availability and dependency, humans are always prone to make mistakes. And on-site instruments, which is also difficult to calibrate and actually use them. Very important is the miscommunication. In construction, you'd probably experience that, and stakeholder management. How do you have a single source of truth? I think the gentleman earlier mentioned. How do you have a single source of truth and maintain that is not as a snapshot in time, but as a continuous source of truth that everybody agrees? And uncorrupted. Because space data, technically you can't corrupt it if you follow the trail. So how does Earth observation help? Regular monitoring. So you can do sub-daily, daily, weekly. So we have customers, some of the largest construction companies in the world, doing projects where they do weekly collections. Some do daily. Some critical times during disasters, it becomes even sub-daily. That's possible from space today. 6 times a day revisits from space is common, in case you didn't know that. 6 times a day. If you were to switch to SAR, you can go 12 times a day. 2 hourly revisit. 12 captures, very, very common. Right. I'll show you an image of SAR of a construction sites shortly. Automatically detect change. Doesn't matter if it's sub-daily or weekly or any other cadence, any other frequency. How do you detect change? We saw yesterday how it's hard to know the flooded area in a SAR image. We saw that yesterday, right? So how do you extract the information of interest to you automatically without having to rely on human eyes? Identify anomalies early. Code of conduct, very, very, very important. Environment is protected. Vegetation stress. Deforestation, which is very common in construction sites. Trees that are not supposed to be felled are felled very often. And harmful material. Again, just a RGB image wouldn't tell you that's a harmful material. You will need to bring something like hyperspectral, 400 band, 500 band data. So this is the idea of that Netflix of sensors helping you, even in construction, across different scenarios. So I call it the horses for courses. You know the phrase? Yes, horses for courses? Yes. So different sensors, different scenarios. Again, not a one-size-fits-all, not a single source. So optical, multispectral, everybody familiar with, can look at it with your naked eye, easy, right? Sight awareness, small change detection. Hyperspectral, we just mentioned about hazardous material. Thermal infrared, construction activity, right? You're not supposed to have a construction activity at a certain time of the day or night, but you're picking up a thermal signature. What's going on there? Greenhouse gas, environmental, CO2, building materials, building sites emit CO2. LiDAR, as I mentioned, coming soon. 3D coming soon. INSAR, my favorite, because you can pick up millimeter level subsidence. Class actions have been filed and won in countries using space-based interferometry SAR to show that things collapsed because there was subsidence. What collapsed? National highways, bridges collapsed because there was millimeter level subsidence that could have been picked up but wasn't picked up. And for now, you got to live with stereo and tri-stereo until we have 3D in space. So a construction site, what it might look like in a geospatial twin. Remember, I speak from space. So it's not your digital twin that the gentleman before alluded to. It's not bringing all the different data sources, IoT, drone, aerial, and anything else, also documents, unstructured content. All of that is very valid, but I'm speaking in the context of geospatial twin, where we use space data to create a twin of a site and an ongoing construction and the management of it. So, a simplified view of the world. How does a geospatial twin look like? Very simple. You got a site, and you got the digital replica of it. You just deploy all those sensors I showed you and continuously monitor and update. Right? So again, back to that same OODA loop, right? So site survey for environmental mapping, early warning of structural defects. Prior to the construction, because you're understanding the site prior to construction, but also ongoing construction. Live events. What if there was a fire, a flood, while the construction is undergoing? What happens? Impact assessment of heat, right? Not just heat islands, but construction site heat. What the impact of it. If it's a single building, probably not, but if it's a very large area like Nusantara, it has a significant impact on environment. How do you then deploy these tip and cue workflows? Automated tip and cue across these sensors I mentioned. So I thought I'll show you some pictures. So this is a construction site. Unzoom. I wanted to use the actual platform to show. Then I found the internet is very choppy. So I decided I'm roaming, so it didn't work well. But the problem is that construction site is right next to an airport and a base. Any guesses? Which airport is this? Nobody? No? Singapore. So that's right next. There's a construction going on, as you can see. That construction site is right below there. And obviously, you can't fly drones and monitor them. Neither can you fly an aerial because planes are landing and taking off. But you can see how visible 15 centimeter from space is now. Right? You can even read the markings of the base. This is a little further than that location, but multiple constructions going on. Another. But this is away from the airport site, but still in a drone-denied environment. That one I showed you earlier was a new terminal extension. This is completely a commercial construction, about 1 square kilometer away from the airport, still drone-denied. So what do you do? How do you monitor? In Singapore, the company that doing the construction is sitting in Sydney, Australia. How do they monitor satellites? Every week. That's what they are monitoring. If I was able to zoom, I would have zoomed into a tip bin. You can see what's inside the tip bin on our platform. But this is just a screen capture. Closer to that Singapore island, there's also water. So you can see 15 centimeter, how clear the structures are. So this is what's happening even in construction and managed maintenance. We're starting to see, whether it's on land or in water, geospatial twins are being built and managed in the life of construction. Building height extraction using digital terrain model. Just a simple, poor panchromatic, not color. You want to extract the height. Let's say some building collapsed. Man-made disaster, natural disaster, buildings collapsed. And you want to see how much height is lost and how much is still around. That is the level of accuracy, 7.867 meter. Stereo collection, stereo pair collection in panchromatic 50 centimeter. Road subsidence. Yesterday I showed a picture of, this could be building subsidence, but I showed a picture of the floods and how you could see only clouds, right? And then I showed a picture of SAR and said, does anyone can even figure out where the floods are in that? Very difficult. Same thing. How do you know where the subsidence in this is? It's a millimeter level subsidence on this road between two periods, 2024 July and September 24, a couple of months. Those are the subsidence areas. So it's in millimeter. So interferometry is very powerful to catch millimeter level subsidence of anything. That's the SAR. Pretty picture, isn't it? That's again an image, but if it was on a platform, we could zoom into it, and I won't ask. So does anyone know this? It'll be silly. so yes. So if you zoom in, you'll see the details of this in SAR. This is SAR. It's a 50 centimeter SAR resolution. So situational awareness, ladies and gentlemen, is once again multisensory. I didn't have much to prepare to go through a lot more different sensor-based images and pictures to show you the ones I described. But yeah, so essentially, that's the message I want to leave you with. Thank you.
Available. So, as a government organization, and we are very interested in using all of this technology, the challenge now is the cost.
Cost?
Yes.
Right.
So,
even for you?
Of course. LiDAR, we have LiDAR and satellite, so this is, it will solve all our problems. Right. Now we do LiDAR every 5 years, but it's costly, really. So, do you have an idea about the cost of this technology by satellites?
Just particularly LiDAR?
All the sensors. I have this page which is hundreds of satellites. If you go back to that slide, please.
Yes. So let's. Great question. Affordability question, right?
That's right. Yeah,
right. So this is. Thank you for this question, and I'll stay here just in case those in the back of the room. The question is, what's the affordability of this Netflix experience? Right? So that's the different genres, right? Okay. Again, horses for courses. Different sensors, different price points. Just to give you an idea, on the multispectral, the cheapest sensor on the platform costs $3 a square kilometer, over 1 meter to task. The 15 centimeter, for example, just to give you an idea, is about $20 a square kilometer. And if you say you're taking a 50 square kilometer area, that's like $1,000. Before you can even take your drone out, it's going to be tens of $1,000s more expensive. A drone survey, an aerial survey, you can't get that for $1,000, right? So that's how affordable space data has become. That's just on this side of things. Give you an idea of a SAR. A 50 centimeter SAR, again, I'm just sort of lowest common denominator speaking, 25 square kilometer again, just to give you an idea, is about $1,000. To be precise, that one is $950. So just to give you an idea, some of the sensor numbers are in my head. So it gives you an idea of the kind of commercial today in using space-based data. LiDAR, as you go towards then the right, is known. It's not known yet at the moment. We are the Uber for satellites. The satellite we aggregate hundreds of satellites and satellite operators, both commercial and government. So I won't be able to advise you on the exact pricing of the LiDAR as yet, but given your interest, I'll definitely follow up to let you know as we prepare to host them sometime mid to third quarter of this year. But yeah, so I would say most of them are in the hundreds and thousands of dollars per tasking. And also there's a function of how fast you want. Right? If you want something in emergency mode, which means it comes in 4 hours. From the time you task to getting the data and information, it's 4 hours. It's coming down to hours, 1 or 2 hours. That's going to cost slightly more than waiting for like 1 whole day. So there is also the kind of the latency cost, right? Faster you want, more expensive, slower. Yeah, so that's kind of the commercial aspects. I mean, we were founded with a very fundamental mission, which is to make situational awareness from space easy, with a vision to make it accessible, affordable, and usable for everyone. So this is why we have 2% and their pet, 2% and their pet companies, startups on our platform, as much as some of the largest defense agencies in the world. Anybody and everybody should have access to space-based situational awareness. It should not be concentrated at the top of the pyramid. We wanted this capability to be available all the way down to the bottom of the pyramid. So the affordability has been critically thought of how to make it. So you don't need, as I mentioned yesterday, you don't need to do hundreds of thousands and millions of dollar contracts. This works very similar to Uber Cash. You deposit, you draw down. It's up to you how much you want to deposit and draw down. Of course, there are discounting regimes and so forth applies for higher spend. That's natural, that's expected, it's a business. But if you're not one with the means, we have, just to put into perspective, and this I can say, some of the largest navies in the southern hemisphere, but also the tiniest coast guards with one vessel, right? But navies with lots of frigates and vessels are also on the platform. Sorry, long-winded, but I thought it's a very important question. Thank you very much. Your Excellency.
Thank you very much. I just have, I would like to ask about the fundamentals, just about a little bit about the fundamentals. You mentioned earlier about Uber and Uber model. I just would like, if you can elaborate, just for me to understand the relationship.
Great. We don't have any relationship with Uber. We just borrowed the model, the business model. So the idea is, think of the left side as the world before Uber. You have your private vehicles, your own cars, or you rely on taxi companies, or you might some hired car. So the left side is a constrained model. You can't be where you want, when you want, with what vehicle you want all the time. That logic is what we applied in the world where, unless you are on the top of the pyramid, for most people, they were here, for a lot of them, they were just taking public transport. Sentinel, Landsat, Modis. It has, while it's great, open sources, they have their challenges. So we brought a commercial capability where we aggregated hundreds of satellites, 500 plus and counting, in 3 years, less than 3 years. We are a 3-year-old company, headquartered in Singapore. We became known as Uber simply because we just did that and made this platform accessible to every business, every government. And just like in Uber Cash, you deposit, you draw down, as I mentioned, Your Excellency. On this platform, you deposit 5,000, 50,000, 500,000, 1 million, whatever you like, and you draw down per your use. So it's completely a utility model. And in doing so, those satellites that we aggregated to deliver that situational awareness for you is all of these. Any Earth observation satellite. And as you would notice, not just imaging. It's also AIS, RF. So maritime is one of our big segment. So we pick up walkie-talkie signals, SATCOM signals, marine radar signals. Why? Illegal fishing, distress, oil spills, dark vessel issues, security, national security. Of course, lots of imaging sensors. All of them are anything that is to do with Earth observation in one platform. So even if you are the most resourceful, It is impossible to have access to 500, 600 satellites, either by yourself as a sovereign capability, or even to go and do those contracts. There are 40 plus operators on our platform, both commercial and government. There are lots of government satellites also on the platform. And some of them are not just the usual sun-synchronous and mid-incline, it's also near-equatorial. As you know, there's no commercial operator in near-equatorial, but we have several government satellites. Therefore, we are truly like Uber, parked in every orbit to get to you fast as you need, rather than waiting for a taxi on a Friday evening after a soccer match when it's pouring cats and dogs. You know what that experience was like before Uber and Kareem. I'm sure you didn't face it, but most people did. So yeah, so that's the fundamental. If you were to ask me what is the fundamental about our model, we just borrowed that business model of convenience for use of satellite data for situational awareness, if that makes sense. Thank you, sir. And it's also resilience, right? So think about it. This gives you resilience. Because if you are depending on one operator, one contract, and you know what's happening today in the geopolitics world, somebody will come along and say, sorry, you can't have my satellites. Ask Ukrainian what happened, right? So it's resilience. It's augmented resilience. Even if you had your own sovereign satellites, and if they were to go out of order, you're stuck. Uber gave you the resilience. Even in today's world of local transport, that's what Uber Kareem does. That's exactly what we wanted to do for everyone with this model. Thank you.
I have a question here as well, on this side, yeah?
Oh, sorry.
And I think this is more to do with the security of data and what sort of, like, in the current scenario that you are seeing globally, there are even hostile takeovers of the countries. And how do you ensure that whatever data that you are collecting through the satellites, whether they are government satellites or private satellites, how do you ensure that, you know, this data is not falling into the wrong hands? Or sometimes, what is your deterrent as a company that tomorrow some deep state comes to you and says, you know, force you to give you this data? So what sort of deterrent? Because every country, I'm sure, while monitoring their projects or while monitoring their facilities from the space, would be concerned about exposing this information to the satellite, which might be a very serious concern for many countries. And I think probably globally, all the countries would be sharing the same feeling, I'm sure. So, yeah, if you can explain a little bit about the security of data.
Right.
How do you ensure that security, and how do you safeguard yourself from succumbing to the request or forced acquisition of data from the deep state?
Pressures. Right. So I've been often asked this question. I live in Sydney, Australia. Why did you found the company in Singapore? Yes, but you see, you got to pick the bets. So the bet we picked was to be in a neutral country. We picked a bet to be in a neutral country, a non-aligned nation, and that is Singapore. From our perspective, it is better of all the options, right? So that's just one thought process around the pressures of the government, if I may. The second is the security. Everything on the platform is encrypted, and the satellites are obfuscated. Now, this is a very important principle we operate with. The satellites are obfuscated. The customers are obfuscated. So when you task, unless the satellite is a government satellite, and we tell you so on the platform, this is a government satellite, this is non-obfuscated, because no dual-use government satellite will allow for obfuscated tasking. You would appreciate that. But commercial operators leave that to us because they trust us with our KYC, know your customer. It is said it's easier to get a bank account than to get an account on Eartheye platform. For every 3 registrations that come through, only 2 get through. So Obfuscated satellites, obfuscating customers. So that in one answer to your question. Everything is encrypted. We're starting to look at quantum, but right now everything is encrypted in the classical sense, both in transit and at rest. And every customer had their own containers or own storage on the platform. So the colloquial use of China walls in between. So you can't go across to your neighbor. Those are the principles we operate with. Thank you.
You mentioned that you need some sensors to be installed in different locations. Is that correct? Or how do the sensors actually work? Are they like used for the whole range of products?
Is that question in the context of construction or in general?
In general. How
Okay.
do the sensors work and how
Right.
do they send the information to the satellite?
So these are what's called Earth observation satellites, right? So in the domain of satellites, you have satellite communication, PNT, which is your GPS, and then Earth observation. So all of these satellites, the 500 and growing, they all carry one or more of these sensors we talked about, right? So multispectral, SAR, full motion video, thermal, hyperspectral, greenhouse gas, etc., etc., etc. These are all sensing instruments on these birds. So on the platform, our customers are tasking them, just like calling Uber, saying, in this area of interest of mine, in this time of interest, I need Eartheye to collect in these sensors, or they say, give me this information. So we have two types of customers. Those who come to our platform just to collect data using one or more of these sensors, i.e. Uber Eats. Then there are other customers who don't really care much about the sensors. They're just after that information. There's a flood unfolding. How much is the flood extent? How much area is flooded? There's a deforestation. How many hectares has been felled and how many trees have been felled? So that's an information they come to the platform, again, situational awareness, or how much yesterday I showed oil spill, how automatically we detect oil spill. So the beauty of the platform, that tasking to data, on the right side you are seeing tasking to data, it can take about 3 to 4 hours. Data to feeds, detecting oil spill, where the oil spill is moving next. Greenhouse gas emissions, right? What is the source rate and how the greenhouse gas, methane, for example, is being propagated, or how many trees are being felled. That information gets delivered in 2 to 3 minutes. I mentioned this yesterday. I showed a video of how that happens. It gets delivered in 2 to 3 minutes. That is the automated information extraction on the same workflow. So imagine if you use that in the construction context, again, it's a rolling information, depending on how frequently you want. Coming back to your question, the sensors are flying on the spacecrafts, on the satellites, and the customers are tasking these satellites directly on our platform, because we go to all these homes, these operating environments or mission control systems of all these satellites we work with, and we allow our customers to task them, just like you call an Uber saying, come to me, take me to A to B, B to C, and I pay you so much to do that, and how fast you want to do or how slow you want to do.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry? They're all LEO satellites. They're all low Earth orbit satellites. So they are not geostationary. So this is not CCTV in the sky. That's why there is a latency of 3 to 4 hours. Now, we are going to bring that 3 to 4 hour latency for information down to 30 minutes. So in Space Summit in Singapore, first week of February, we are going to demonstrate 30-minute latency. So, and eventually it will get down to 10 minutes. So we don't bring the data, you just get the information alone to the user first, then follow it up with the data. So all that processing, what shows here, remote sensing, computer vision, machine learning, deep learning, it's going to happen in the spacecraft, rather than bringing it down and running it in the cloud. That is why there's a bit of a delay today, because we need the data to come down. We are going to bypass that, short circuit that, process it in the spacecraft itself, and then deliver, instead of hundreds megabytes and sometimes gigabytes, if it's hyperspectral 400 band data, or SAR high resolution can run into gigabits, we're only going to bring down kilobits, just that information.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much.